Good morning and welcome to the Foggy Dew. This is Colin. Well, gang, I have a ton of notes in front of me, so I'm just going to go ahead and dive right into the show. So I guess the best place to start is kind of a fun story. So there were a bunch of current Medal of Honor stories and citations that dropped last week. A number of different American families found out last week that their loved ones, deceased or living, will win a Medal of Honor. I just think that's an amazing moment. And to be fair, look, they're all amazing stories, but one of them jumped off the page to me. Now, a guy that is alive, a 100-year-old Korea vet, will win a Medal of Honor. We found this out last week. 100 years old and he's still alive. So this 100-year-old man's name is Royce Williams. And I was reading a lot of these things, but the citation for Royce Williams is just crazy. So in 1952 in the Korean War, Lieutenant Williams was a pilot in Korea. So here he is in the South China Sea on an aircraft carrier. Lieutenant Williams is piloting a Panther jet. So this guy is piloting a Panther jet on his second sortie of the day, like literally like air support over Korea. So Williams is in a formation with 3 other Panther aircraft. So you have 4 U.S. aircraft, 4 Panthers. Well, these guys, again, they had finished their sortie and they're flying back to their aircraft carrier to land. Well, these guys look up and what they see is 7 MiGs. 7 MiGs above them. So enemy aircraft. Well, the other 3 Panther jets are out of fuel. So they had to land. These guys are like, look, man, we got to bail. We have no fuel left. We cannot engage these MiGs. We have to land. So these 3 other planes land on the carrier. Well, what that does is that leaves Williams alone in the air with 7 MiGs. This guy is alone in the air against 7 MiGs, a one-man dogfight against 7 MiGs. So the U.S. command on the aircraft carrier saw what was occurring. They were like, hey, man, you got to come down. Come down, let the guns on the ship handle it. You cannot be up there like that. Well, as he's getting that notification from his command, the MiGs open up fire on Williams. Well, now Williams is fighting for his life. So he's engaging these guys in a gunfight, basically in the air. Well, over the course of the battle, Williams ends up shooting down 4 of the MiGs. This guy hit 2 other MiGs, and then they had to withdraw. So, like, he hits them, they're losing gas or fuel, whatever, and they have to withdraw. So Williams at this point knocks out 6 of the 7 MiGs. So Williams is now up in the air with just 1 MiG left. But Williams' plane is just destroyed. He's literally flying just a wounded craft at this point. Williams is totally out of ammunition. He had lost his hydraulics. Well, so Williams is like, I got to land this plane or I'm going to crash. So Lieutenant Williams is able to land his Panther back on the carrier. And somehow this guy was uninjured after all this. Here's the kicker on this. Lieutenant Williams had 263 bullet holes in the Panther. 263 bullet holes in his plane. Now, that lone MiG that was left, the guns on the aircraft carrier ended up chasing away the last MiG. But I'm reading this story like my jaw was on the ground. So this one-man dogfight is believed to be the longest ever in Navy history. 7 MiGs against Williams. How long did this go on? How long was this dogfight? 35 minutes. This guy was in a dogfight for 35 minutes. I couldn't even believe it when I read it. 7 versus 1 for 35 minutes. 263 bullet holes. Anyway, some of the stuff that came out of this is just unbelievable. Shooting down 4 planes in one engagement is unmatched in U.S. Navy history. How unreal is this story? Here's the crazy part to me. I was reading through this. He was only awarded a Silver Star at the time. They reviewed it afterwards and upgraded him to a Navy Cross, and now it's going to be a Medal of Honor. Well deserved. What a total badass this guy. What a story that is. And this guy's 100 years old. Wow. But I guess I'm reading this story and all these people like, thank God for guys like this. Thank you, Lieutenant Royce Williams. I told my son that story when I saw, my son's like, that's amazing. And quite frankly, I look at all the news that comes out, like all just the garbage we watch on the mainstream media. Like, that should have been the only story last week, was talking about this guy and these guys that won a Medal of Honor for their just incredible bravery, their selfless sacrifice, a 35-minute dogfight, 7 versus 1. God, it's just amazing. Lieutenant Royce Williams, what a great thing. I can't wait to watch him get the medal. That's going to be amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to start the show off on a cool note. So hopefully you enjoyed that. So switching gears, I actually received an audience question over the weekend, and I didn't want to do a clearing the fog episode, but I wanted to go ahead and answer this question because I could either do this one of two ways. I could do it the short way or the long way, and I'm just going to try to answer it completely. But the audience question is, what to make of Trump in the Epstein Files? What to make of Trump in the Epstein Files? My short answer, nothing. Donald Trump was named in the Epstein Files, yes. But I can tell you, as somebody that has their finger on the pulse of every conspiracy theory, I have never seen anything to suggest that Donald Trump did anything untoward, that Donald Trump did anything wrong as far as Epstein goes. And I would tell you that I've seen nothing, and that would go all the way back to 2016. And I would think at this point, after 10 years, that I would have seen something about Trump. That's not to say that, like, I think there's still files that are out there. I don't know what could come out, but I've never seen anything that would suggest Donald Trump is wrapped up in Epstein Island. And I guess my only point with this is that zoom the scope back, just from a logical standpoint. Jeffrey Epstein has been well known in Alex Jones land. And I just mentioned I knew about Epstein for a while here. I've been aware of Jeffrey Epstein and what was going on in Epstein Island for 20 years. And I guess the only thing that I would tell you about is the current media fixation on Donald Trump and Epstein. Always watch the response of the media. That's the best way to look at it. Look at the response of the opposition. And I guess the easiest place to start in that, when you zoom the scope back on this whole picture, look at the buildup to the 2024 election. Donald Trump was sued over and over again on bogus, bootstrap charges. He was charged, I think it was 79 felonies. It's always this preponderance of number, there's 79 felonies. They tried to take Donald Trump off the ballot. They tried to kill him twice. I mean, look at the people that were arrayed against him in the Biden administration and more broadly in government. You had James Comey, who absolutely hates Donald Trump, Clapper, Brennan. Those guys are all CIA, FBI guys. Those three guys in specific were in charge of the FBI, CIA, and those guys absolutely hate Donald Trump. They loathe him. Well, if they had anything on him, why go through the trouble to sue him? Well, why try to take him off the ballot to kill him? If they had something on Donald Trump as related to Jeffrey Epstein, they would have produced it at this point. And I think that that's incontrovertible. I mean, if they had any evidence to suggest that Donald Trump was engaged in any way in horrible behavior, he would be in jail already. There's not another way for me to look at that. And I guess if you look at it from the counterpoint to that, if they had something on him, they would have done something. I guess another way to look at that entire situation is this. Why would they want to put him in jail? Why would they want to kill him? Why would they want to take him off the ballot? I would just urge you to think maybe Trump knows what they did. He wasn't involved in it, but he knew what was going on. Maybe Donald Trump knows who did what. And maybe this is why they wanted to basically just get rid of this guy, is because they think that Donald Trump in some way is going to expose them. That would seem to me to be a more logical conclusion at this point. And I guess if you look at it, I've talked about it on the show before, I suppose a better question to ask, given this whole scenario, is all of the mania around getting rid of Donald Trump and calling him Hitler and all these other terrible things. The question to really ask yourself is, what interest does Donald Trump threaten? What about Donald Trump causes this type of reaction? It's like a body fighting off a foreign invader. It's this immune response. And you're seeing it right now in the media. The media is just frothing at the mouth about Donald Trump and the Epstein Files. Trust me, I watch MSNBC, I watch CNN. I want to watch what they're talking about. They keep saying this, that Donald Trump was named in the files, that he was in there. I think he was in there 10,000 times. His name was referenced. Okay, and what? That his name being in there does not imply that he did some type of criminality. And what I would tell you about the same media that's frothing at the mouth now, it's so funny to me. It's almost like the dog that caught the car. Their analysis has been that Trump hid the files, like that he told Pam Bondi, Kash Patel to hold on to it because in some way he was in the files and he wanted to cover up his own criminality. That is immediately wrong on its face. Media wrong again. Now, why were the files delayed? I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't know why Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, why didn't they just produce the files when they were requested to? I don't know the answer to that. But I think making the leap that Donald Trump is hiding his own criminality is a bridge too far for me. And like, if I look at this whole situation, I think there's like a sequencing here, like some sort of sequence of events that's going to play out. And I think like Epstein is a card in like a deck of cards. Epstein is a card that they didn't want to play yet, but they were forced to. And I guess when you look at like the media saying, oh, he was in the files 10,000 times or whatever it is, like these are the same people that told you Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. This is the same media that lied to you for years, telling you that Joe Biden was cognizant, that he wasn't a walking cadaver. And this is the same media that parroted every COVID slogan for years. So, I mean, forgive me for not trusting the media at this point. They get absolutely everything wrong. So, you're asking me the question, like, what do I make of it? Not much at this point. Not much. And again, if that changes, like, throw them in jail. I have no problem with that. And I guess, so that's the short answer to that question. Now, do you want the longer story there from me? And I guess my question is, we have unlimited time on the podcast, but like, I just want to restate something for the record. Probing and discussing what people would broadly consider like conspiracy theories is not my objective on the Foggy Dew. I like dealing in facts. I do not want to deal in conjecture. I want to have this show be able to like, you could play it to somebody like, hey, like think about things differently. I don't want to have people go, oh, this is an Alex Jones knockoff or something. Like, I just don't want to play in that pool, right? But that being said, like, I don't want to play in that pool, but if you ask me a question very specifically, I will answer it. So I'm going to reiterate a couple points that I had talked about in a prior, like, Clearing the Fog episode. Number one is that you are in the awakening, whether you like it or not. And I call it the Great Awakening. I've said that before. What you are seeing with your own two eyes is the conspiracy theories that were like whispered about. Those conspiracy theories are becoming facts. And what I would tell anybody asking these questions and seeing Epstein, like what's going on here type of mentality is, the only thing that I would tell you is that your brain is being stretched, whether you know it or not. And the problem with this whole thing is that if you accept one fact, you're like, okay, that fact makes sense. Like that fact is now true. The conspiracy theory that I thought was a conspiracy is now a fact. So point A is true. And then you go, point A is true, but certainly not point B. And then you're like, after a while, you're like, you know what? Point B is true. And then point C, and then point D. It's like you're like going down this like primrose path of conspiracy theories becoming facts. And I guess that whole sequence there, like, leads you to a place like where you think lizards are running the government or something. It's nuts. And I guess like look at Bill Maher. I don't particularly like Bill Maher, but he is a liberal populist comedian, except like I watch Bill Maher like clips. I don't like really watch the show. But if you watch Bill Maher's progression over like the last 5 years, like he sat there on his show in 2020, 2021, like COVID is totally legitimate, you know, vaccine, all of it. He fell on the trust the expert side. Well, over the past few years, he has gradually accepted, as more information comes out, Bill Maher has now gradually accepted that the science deniers, that he called people science deniers, the vaccines, you know, anti-vaxxers, he has accepted that those people had a point, that they were correct. So his brain has been stretched from point A to point B. Now, why am I bringing up Bill Maher? Because twice last week, one was Stephen A. Smith, and I can't remember who the other one was with, but Bill Maher the guy that ridiculed people on the conservative side of the argument, he said twice, quote, "Where does QAnon go for an apology?" You're on a different planet, guys. When a guy like Bill Maher, who's a relatively mainstream, I guess, a liberal populist pundit, comedian, he is gradually moving down that primrose path. He has gone from point A to point B to point C. He is starting to accept more and more conspiracy theories as facts. And that's on its face. I'm just observing what I'm seeing. And what I would tell you is that Bill Maher, then, if you back up and look at like a guy like Bill Maher, the careful, constructed reality that he had built around him is crumbling in real time. And what I would tell you is if you take Bill Maher as a microcosm of that experience, that same phenomenon is occurring now in society at scale. People standing around you, like at the grocery store, people at, Lowe's or whatever, they're literally becoming aware point after point that conspiracy theories maybe are facts. And I guess you could look at any one of these things. But again, I don't want to get into it. Pizzagate, Seth Rich, Julian Assange. I mean, go down the list. And I guess my analysis on it's like people like waking up on Christmas morning. But instead of like presents under the tree, it's insanity on tap. I don't know another way to tell it. And the only thing I can tell you about any of this is that the thing that I'm looking at now is what I call the Epstein paradox. And again, these are just names that I've created in my head for these phenomenon. And I guess, so you might be, what is the Epstein paradox? Okay. To me, in my own brain, the Epstein paradox is the apparently high volume of criminality juxtaposed to the apparent lack of accountability. Meaning we see evidence of all these criminal acts, but nobody's being held accountable for it. That's a paradox. And look, if Bill Clinton was on Epstein Island, arrest him. If Donald Trump was on Epstein Island, arrest him too. And what I would tell anybody, this is not a right or left issue. This is what kind of world are we leaving for our children? And I think it's becoming patently obvious to most people that depraved criminality occurred. Not just depraved criminality occurring, it occurred at the highest levels of our government. And then if you zoom the scope back even more on it, the scale of this criminality is global. It's staggering to people. And I guess, so I said about the Epstein paradox, this kind of like yin and yang between like criminality versus accountability, that to me is the problem that I'm obsessed with now. Because I can tell, like following this for 20 years, like I know how we got here, but I guess my question is, how does it end? Or does it end? Because the whole thing on its face is horrifying. But I guess like I'll put it another way. Let me give you another way to think about it. If I came to anybody like I said, I know for 20 years, if I came to you in 2017 and said, "Hey, our government's just a bunch of pedophiles," you're like, I mean, you wouldn't believe it. Yeah, if I said something like, "Oh yeah, like elites were going to Jeffrey Epstein Island and having like all these crazy depraved acts," you'd be like, "Okay, great, Alex Jones. Like, what time?" Like that's would be your immediate response in 2017. So I guess my question is, okay, I'm going to make up a few numbers. Okay, so let's say in 2017, about 5% of people knew about Epstein's Island. 5%. Okay, well in 2026, what's the number now? 75%? 85%? You can turn on your local news and they're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. So, I mean, we've had this massive shift in like what's being discussed publicly, and that is the Overton window. I mean, the Overton window is a base of topics that are broadly understood and discussed in a society at any given time. So the Overton window from 2017 whatever to 2026 has markedly moved. And what I would tell you is like in 2017, 5% of people being aware of it and their leader is Alex Jones is not enough to take down the elite. They had the media. They have all these apparatuses that protected them. But what's the number to take these people down? 50%, 60%? Is that enough? And I guess my point with this is at a certain point, you hit critical mass. And are we there? I don't know the answer to that. All I can tell you is the media can't cover this up anymore. And of course, this brings up obvious questions like the FBI, CIA, they all knew about this and did nothing. That's why I talk about a right-left issue. The right knew about it. The left knew about it. The FBI knew about it. The CIA, nobody did anything. Everybody's guilty here. But I guess my point with this, like with the media can't even cover this up anymore. It's like sticking your finger in a dike. The minute that they stick their finger in a new hole pops open. And the media can't sit here with a straight face and talk about conspiracy theory. They can't talk about disinformation. Anytime somebody says that, you know that they're just like making it up. And I guess my point is like, take those numbers, like 5%, 60%, whatever it is. There are way too many people aware of this subject now. They're awake. That's the Great Awakening. And I guess I'll make a couple more points. Bill Maher, again, is a perfect example of this. He has gradually moved his mental goalposts. He's moved the goalposts. But what I would tell you is the process for individual people, that is irreversible. You can't just accept point A and then say, I'm not going to go any farther. Because the minute you let one thing in, you let it all in. And I guess I was out with friends the other night. You have normal people that have never looked at this stuff ever. They thought it was all conspiracy. They're talking about it openly. And all I can tell you is like sitting there watching that watching normal people like becoming aware of all this like crazy stuff. Things are going to change. They have to. They have to change. So, but what I would tell you like more broadly, like if you look at this discussion, and I'll kind of wrap this up is, so you have an Epstein paradox. Well, what else do you have? You have a COVID paradox. You have a Russiagate paradox. You have a 2020 election paradox. That to me is the real issue here. And the reason is because you can't just sit here and pick and choose which conspiracies you agree with. Like I've had a conversation with people like, yes, Jeffrey Epstein was doing crazy things on his own, but certainly the 2020 election wasn't stolen. Sure about that? I don't know what to tell you. You can't pick and choose which conspiracy theories you find agreeable or not. And it's almost like a boat leaving a harbor. You're now at open sea. Conspiracy theories aren't like a Chinese buffet. You can't just like pick and choose reality. Maybe you just haven't investigated that issue enough. Maybe you haven't looked deep enough. You have a mental block on whatever rabbit hole that is that you don't want to go down. But it's like Bill Maher. The goalposts keep moving. And my problem with all these paradoxes and looking at this broadly in society, to me, it's like a mental schism. Like people are having a mental breakdown with this stuff. And the problem that I have with it, it's not one or two people. You have like 100 million people having a mental breakdown all at the same time. Man, it's just totally wild. And again, I don't know if I've answered this question or not. Again, I don't want to sit here and play like conspiracy theory guy and like do all this stuff. I don't know what to tell you. But I guess I'll just leave it at this. I hope that helps. I'm happy to answer any specific questions. The only thing I can tell you is, what a time to be alive. It's unbelievable. I really like, I'm so thankful I'm alive at this moment in time in history to watch all this stuff. You are seeing like this convergence of events and it's so wild. So anyway, I don't know, guys. Keep praying, ask questions, stay vigilant. We'll see what happens. So there you go. Okay, so switching gears, I watched a lot of Sunday show clips the last couple days, and I keep noticing a pattern. Democrat leaders broadly have absolutely no answers on voter ID. I saw Adam Schiff talk with Jonathan Karl on ABC on a Sunday show. Now, Jonathan Karl on ABC shows two stats. So here are the stats. Among US adults requiring photo ID to vote, 83% of people support that. 16% of people oppose photo ID. So broadly in American society, you have 83% support for photo ID required to vote. Well, then what Jonathan Karl did in front of Adam Schiff is he broke it down by party. 71% of Democrats support it. 95% of Republicans support. I mean, this is a huge bipartisan issue. Here was Adam Schiff. So here's Jonathan Karl. I'll just go through this exchange. Karl, quote, "What about requiring a photo ID to vote? Are you in favor of that?" Schiff, "The SAVE Act is a voter suppression law." Jonathan Karl, "But 71% of Democrats favor requiring photo ID. Is that something you can support? And if not, why not?" Schiff, "This is another way to suppress the vote." Man, look, you need ID for everything. This argument about not showing photo ID to vote is getting dumber by the minute. Yeah, and look, I'll go even further. Here was Hakeem Jeffries. He was on with Dana Bash. So here's Dana Bash talking to Hakeem Jeffries. These are two of the ranking Democrats. Dana Bash, quote, 71% of Democrats support requiring an ID to vote. Why are they wrong? Jeffries, quote, Republicans are trying to engage in clear and blatant voter suppression. Bash, but Democrats won in Virginia and had to show ID. So why not support it? Jeffries, Trump is trying to steal the election. I mean, their own constituents want this. It's such a weak argument. It doesn't, honestly, it's totally incongruent. Not only is it a weak argument, it's getting weaker by the minute. Chuck Schumer, who's the Senate Minority Leader, called requiring photo ID to vote Jim Crow 2.0. Man, are you serious? You need ID to pay rent. You need ID to get food assistance. Why would somebody who's unable to get an ID even want to vote? If you don't have an ID, you're obviously not engaged in the system at all. But if you're sitting here in 2026 telling me that it's racist to ask for ID, then I guess maybe we shouldn't be asking people when they buy liquor or cigarettes. Is that racist too? Telling me it's a racist thing is just absurd on its face. I'm just trying to verify who you are and what your age is to buy cigarettes or alcohol. How's that any different than voting? I had Kamala Harris. I can't go through the whole exchange here, but Kamala Harris, a leading presidential candidate for 2028, was asked about it. Well, she provided word salad for the interviewer. She said something like this, quote, "Almost impossible for rural people to make photocopies." What? Man, I need her drug dealer bad. How do I get on that train, man? The stuff she gets is pure. It's just uncut, baby. Rural idea photocopies, what are you talking about? And I guess if you zoom the scope back, these are leaders in the Democrat Party. Kamala Harris, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer. And I guess, unfortunately, the real answer to this question that Dana Bash and Jonathan Karl, it's obvious. The answer is obvious. They just don't want to admit it. They can't. The only states that Kamala Harris won did not require voter ID. Mail-in balloting with no voter ID is obvious fraud. Ballot harvesting, ballot curing, mail-in ballots. I whipped up some numbers over the weekend. You want to hear some crazy numbers here? So here are the numbers of mail-in ballots per election. Okay? In 2024, there were 15 million mail-in ballots. 2008, 23 million. 2012, 27 million. 2016, 33 million. 2020, 70 million. 70 million. So you had as many mail-in ballots in 2020 as you did with 2008, 2012, and 2016 combined. 70 million mail-in ballots in 2020. and no photo ID to vote. Now, the other thing, so just 2024, just for scale, was 49 million. And I think that goes to like the too big to rig, where states started realizing this whole fraud center in mail-in balloting and started curtailing it. But I guess if you look at like 2020, Joe Biden did not campaign. Joe Biden didn't campaign and somehow get 81 million votes. I've talked about this on the show before. Barack Obama, at the height of his powers, got 65 million votes. So Joe Biden gets 16 million more votes than Obama. But the kicker on that, and I've talked to people about this, Joe Biden won less counties than Obama. So if Joe Biden won less counties, how did he get 16 million more votes? And the number like that is so crazy. 16 million is like 2 New York cities. So you mean two New York cities popped up in the specific counties that Joe Biden won? It just doesn't pass the smell test. And I guess my point with any of this, like, here's the truth. And I call me conspiracy theorist, I guess. Our elections have been compromised with mail-in balloting, this photo ID stuff. They've been compromised for years. And I guess my point with any of this, I guess I look at it like kind of like the Epstein thing. I think we're going to learn a lot more about this, because this whole disinformation conspiracy theory stuff just isn't landing anymore. And I talked about it it's a conspiracy theory like Epstein, Hunter's laptop. Joe Biden is, the best version of Biden. But I'm seeing this new slogan from the media, and anytime I see a slogan, my antenna goes up. The media has been out talking about a new slogan. That slogan is 60 lawsuits. Well, we've already talked about 2020. There were 60 lawsuits that said Joe Biden won. Trump lost, 60 lawsuits. Let me tell you something about the 60 lawsuits. Okay, this is what they don't tell you. Exactly zero of those 60 cases were ever litigated. 0 of them. All 60 lawsuits were dismissed on standing. Not one piece of evidence was ever entered into a court. Nada. 0. 60 lawsuits is the new safe and effective to me. It's a canard. But I guess just watching this stuff, like watching these guys get on the Sunday shows, they're totally like backed into a corner with this. No honest person. You have a plurality of Americans can't agree on anything. This is by far one of the highest polling percentage things I've ever seen from Democrats and Republicans to require photo ID to vote. We're supposed to be the best country on the planet. We can't get voter ID to we can't get photo ID to people. But I guess my only point is, like, no honest person believes this about voter ID. And like I said, just like listening to these people, it just makes them look ridiculous. And my only thought about this, like watching this, like kind of like they're like, it's Jim Crow 2.0, like Donald Trump said. All I can tell you is that this is going to get much, much louder. It's going to get louder and louder and louder about photo ID to vote. Again, just some huge major league red pills going on. All I can tell you is these people know that if voter ID is required in elections, it's going to really destroy the Democrat Party. This is their Alamo, which is why these excuses are not going to work anymore. But trust me, I'm going to be watching it. But like literally, like watching it on these Sunday clips, I literally like the answers are just not. It's totally incoherent. But trust me, I'm going to be watching that whole thing very closely. So another quick hit. I talk a lot in the show about Europe kind of going down the tubes, which I think is unfortunate. But the EU just appears to me to be like a parasite sucking the host dry. Well, over the weekend, a loyal Foggy Dew listener, actually one of the people that urged me to start this show, had sent me an article. And this was an article from Zero Hedge. Well, apparently a very big vote is happening in March. The Netherlands in March will have a huge vote. The Netherlands is voting on taxing unrealized cap gains. Any annual increase on a holding would be affected by this. And all I can tell you about taxing unrealized cap gains, that is the socialist dream. If your house goes up 10%, over a year, you're going to get taxed. Your stocks go up 5%, you're going to get taxed on the unrealized cap gains. And never mind that it's unrealized, meaning you never saw one dime in profit of this, just your books went up. Your ledger went up. Getting into unrealized cap gains, liberals, progressives, socialists, communists, taxing unrealized cap gains is like their wet dream. Taxing unrealized cap gains is straight up communism. That is a government strip mining private capital. You really at that point don't own anything in that system. Private citizens, when you have unrealized cap gains, private citizens cannot accrue wealth. And I guess all I would tell you is if that measure passes in the Netherlands, look out. Because if that passes in the Netherlands, that's going to be replicated across the EU immediately. And what I would tell you is if you start taxing unrealized cap gains, that is going to destroy what is left of the European economy. If you look across the EU, and I talk about it on the show, almost all of these individual states now are socialist. These states have these massive welfare programs. They have massive pension programs, uncontrolled immigration, free housing, free healthcare. Private wealth and private capital and the ability to grow your capital, that is the only bulwark left against it, like falling into straight communism. Here's an easy way to think. Combine all the government liabilities that I just mentioned. Combine all the liabilities of like welfare programs, pension programs, and then pair that with Europe deindustrializing. They're not growing. And what I would tell you is that they're backsliding. You have energy regulations, manufacturing limitations, confiscation of private capital. That's killing growth. And what that is really, if you look at it, it's textbook communism. You have a rapidly expanding social cost structure with less industry to finance it. So again, the last stand for the citizen is private capital. And it's interesting, like looking at the whole scope of it, because the leadership of the EU and these individual nation states is so bad. And the thing that I think is so crazy about it is these leaders keep gaslighting their populations. Like it's like a puppet show. They keep pretending that they're serious leaders. Like, look at that EU deal with India. They're like patting themselves on the back for making like a terrible deal. I mean, yeah, congrats on that EU deal with India. That's going to flood Europe with like Indian products, cheap crap. All that deal's going to do too is like create a lawful migration pathway for Indian citizens. It's a bad deal by bad leadership. And I'm going to give you a specific example of this. Look at France. Look at Macron. Macron is a WEF puppet. Just like a guy like Mark Carney in Canada, a Keir Starmer in England. Macron is like a totally unserious person. He's just in way over his head. And I guess I would tell you, like, I saw this quote from Macron, I had to laugh. Like, anybody serious, like if you're a serious world leader, you know that AI is the future. AI is the race now. Well, here's Macron. Here's Macron, quote, "In France, we believe in science. That is why on May 5th, I issued a clear and open call to the world. For science, choose France. I am very proud that this call has resonated so strongly. Around 40 leading researchers have chosen France. Through France 2030, we have invested more than 30 million euros to advance health, climate action, AI, and fundamental sciences. Science has found its home." End quote. Wow. So France is investing 30 million euros. 30 million euros over 4 years. That's Macron's massive investment that he's crowing about on X. He's crowing about investing 7 million euros a year. It's unbelievable. So a 7 million euro investment a year for the next 4 years. Anybody curious to know what the social welfare program spend is in France? So this guy's investing 7 million euros a year into emerging technologies like AI. You know what he's spending in social services? France is spending 800 billion in social welfare. 800 billion. That's free healthcare, pensions, unemployment benefits, family support. So 800 billion in welfare, but he's investing 7 million euros as an air quotes investment in science. And I guess what he's not even mentioning in his announcement is that part of the investment is into climate change initiatives. And I guess that's just what industry and manufacturing need is more climate change rules. More climate change rules to stifle innovation. And I guess just looking at this, like he's proud about his accomplishment. Like he's going on like, hey, look at me, I'm doing so great. So here is sober, serious Macron putting on a puppet show for the population. And I'll go one step further in France. Apparently the French parliament is working too. The French parliament just passed the measure. That measure will be voted on later this month. And trust me, I'm going to be watching it closely. But the measure they passed, France would allow non-EU citizens to vote in its elections. That vote will occur February 12th, so just in a couple days. If that measure passes and non-EU citizens are allowed to vote in French elections, that would be like illegal aliens voting in our elections, like codified in law. And if you get non-EU citizens voting in your election, guess what the next thing they're going to pass is? They're going to get a bill to tax unrealized cap gains. But I'm watching all this stuff, and thank you for sending me the article. It's just unreal to watch the EU and France operate. But it's such a shame because like England's the same way, Germany's the same way, Netherlands all the same. I don't really understand here, guys. Those economies are going to tank. The money's going to become worthless. Communism would rise in the EU. And look, what do French nationalists do? Like if you're a French nationalist and you're like, I want a country, like I don't want everybody in the world voting in my elections. Like at what point do French nationalists storm the Bastille again? And the only thing that I would tell you about like storming the Bastille these days, the French citizens have no weapons. So what you have is defenseless citizens being smothered by their government. They're being voted out of existence. Man, it's just crazy. And this whole process in Europe is accelerating. It's just very scary to see and very sad in a lot of ways. But that vote in France is going to be February 12th. And trust me, I'm going to be watching that one very closely. Okay, one last quick hit. As bad as the news is coming out of France, there's actually really good news coming out of Japan. Now, the prime minister in Japan is a lady named Sanae Takachi. Now, who is Takachi? She is a super hard-right conservative. Well, what's the big news coming out of Japan? Well, Takachi, the hard-right conservative, just won a legislative supermajority. That legislative supermajority is very, very big. Now, remember, Japan is a very, very key ally to the United States. Japan is an important deterrent to China in the Pacific. The thing you got to remember about Japan, though, Japan has been stuck in this World War II posture. When they lost World War II, the US had helped design their constitution, and it was basically like a straitjacket. But Japan's posture, meaning as a nation post-World War II, was defensive in nature. By design, the way we set it up post-World War II, Japan was structured not to have offensive capability. Japan was really structured to be pacifist. Again, straitjacket on the country. Well, Takachi, the prime minister, is moving Japan away from that, and that is wonderful news to hear. That is yet another World War II policy that needed to go away. It's been 80 years. Japan needs to play catch up here on the world stage, and the US, quite frankly, needs Japan bad. But Takachi, with this legislative majority, can now enact her agenda. What she plans on doing is fast-tracking military spending. She wants brand new offensive capability for Japan, drones, missiles. But that hawkish stance is very, very good for Japan. What Takachi also wants to do is she wants to build up national intelligence. So like anti-espionage, foreign agent registration, strong military borders, anti-immigration stance. Man, Japan's showing some muscle here. I love it. What she is focusing on is Japan core culture backed by steel. What Japan is going to do with Takachi, they're going to invest heavily into domestic manufacturing. They can now expand their defensive industry. And just to be clear, like if you zoom the scope back to like United States interest in this, the United States needs a hawkish, independent Japan. Japan has really been, a long time, they've been huge into tech development. Japan is very industrial, very sophisticated. But Japan building up its military is a huge global shift, and it's going to help the US a lot. Japan is now asserting their sovereignty. A sovereign, powerful, military acute, industrial Japan is huge on the world stage. They're confident, they're sovereign. This is exactly what Europe is failing to do. This is exactly what Macron is failing to do. This is what Australia is failing to do. Like, look at it in the Pacific. Australia has just gone like full-blown commie. Well, what I would tell you in the Pacific is Japan is the perfect counterweight to China. And I guess I would tell you, just looking at it, Takachi is seeing the chessboard, and good for her. She is the opposite of like a Mark Carney or a Macron. But the US needs strong, independent, sovereign partners, especially in the Pacific. The interesting thing about all this, and definitely a component of it, Takachi is a lady. She's a woman. I can tell you right now, the Foggy Dew would vote for Takachi in 2 seconds flat. And if I look at Takachi, she sure looks to me like a new Margaret Thatcher, like an Iron Lady. You had Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher. I think you're going to kind of get that same paradigm now. You're going to get Takachi and Trump. The post-World War II order is dead and buried. Takachi is seeing the chessboard now with a new post-World War II order. She's tough and strong, man. She's exactly what the US needed. She's exactly what Japan needed. I'll make another point. I'm just thinking about this. I'll make one last point here about Japan and Takachi and all this. This is big for the US in another way. This helps the US because we can now move our forces back out of the Pacific. We can redeploy our own military out of that hemisphere. And who sees that? China, North Korea. And look, I sincerely wish like an England would do this. We need a strong England, but there don't seem to be one to answer the bell here. And I guess they're just way too far gone with a guy like Starmer. But anyway, just huge news out of Japan. I was so excited when I read it. It's just another break from the World War II shackles that a lot of countries have been just tied up in. But I can promise you now, Japan is going to have a seat at the table, and good for them. I'm very happy for Japan. Okay, I'll go ahead and wrap the show up, guys. If you like the show, please go ahead and tell a friend about it. If you would, please go ahead and follow us on Spotify. You can also email the show if you have any questions at foggydew95@gmail.com. But in the meantime, I'd ask you to say a prayer, ask questions, and stay vigilant. This is the Foggy Dew signing off.